By now you would have all seen the news of the bombing in Palm Springs by Guy Barkus. I've already shared a few thoughts on this in a post I made on my channel and in a forthcoming interview which I will share when it comes out. But I felt it was necessary to make this video because there's a few other things I want to touch on which I think are important. So the first thing to say is to be clear that this was a horrific and immoral act of violence. 4 people were injured by the blast and I wish them a speedy recovery, and thankfully no one was killed apart from the perpetrator. But even that death is a tragedy and seems to have been preceded by a troubled life. Obviously no one should have to go through that, and no one should have to go through what those affected by the bombing have and will go through. As Professor David Benatar said in a recent interview with The Times in response to the incident, if his parents had not brought him into the world, there would not be this misery. All of this would have been better never to have been, but it has happened. Much of the media coverage and reaction has linked the bombing primarily to antinatalism. Of course, in time, an investigation will be done by professionals, but I think a few things can be said on this now. Guy did mention antinatalism along with many other ideas in his writings and recordings, but what is clear is the main views motivating him were ethylism and promortalism, not antinatalism. On top of this, he seemed to struggle significantly with his mental well-being and obviously came to the misguided conclusion that he was justified in carrying out this random act of violence. Ethylism and promortalism are quite different from antinatalism, and I've explained the distinctions before, but I think these distinctions have gone relatively underappreciated in the media response, and I'll be honest, by antinatalists as well, who should know better. So very briefly, antinatalism is the view that it's morally wrong to create sentient beings. There is no endorsement of violence or coercion here. Ethylism, on the other hand, is an extinctionist view that seeks to bring about the end to all life, very different from antinatalism. And then promortalism, which isn't really well defined, is interpreted by some as it being positive to end the lives of others, again very different from antinatalism. Antinatalism at its core is about voluntarily not starting new lives. Ethylism and promortalism, at least in part, concern the ending of existing lives. They aren't radical forms of antinatalism or extensions of antinatalism, they are different ideas that some people hold in tandem. Now, why this might be confusing to some people is that all of these ideas tend to, for the most part, coalesce around a philosophically pessimistic view of the world. But this is very different from saying one leads to the other, or if you are one or identify with one, you have to identify with all of them. You don't. I, for example, am an antinatalist, but I'm not an ethylist or a promortalist. I also want to note on some of the reaction that I've seen in the antinatalist space and spaces adjacent to it. There are, of course, people that align with ethylism and promortalism that also condemn the attack, and that is the correct response. But I've also seen people who hold these views that have been justifying the violence and supporting it. It is sick and twisted to support something like this, and where we see people doing it, we should let it be known to them that it's not okay. If these people claim to be supporting antinatalism, they're not, they're just co-opting it. But I think this kind of goes beyond an explicit support of real-world uses of violence. I've spoken about this before, but people need to move away from fanciful thought experiments that rationalize mass violence. It's common to see grandiose, end-of-the-world, violent, and frankly deranged rhetoric in online ethylist spaces and also antinatalist spaces as well. It may seem like just online edgy internet talk to some people, but it can twist people's minds and bleed into the real world. In fact, the internet is now the real world. This kind of rhetoric normalizes the rationalization of violence towards others, and in instances like this can be taken by misguided and unwell people to impose harm on others. This way of thinking needs to stop defining the discussion around these subjects, and people need to realize that antinatalism is not some fantasy about ending the world. What I think also needs to be made clear is there is a difference between antinatalism as a philosophy and some of the spaces online where it's discussed, where it's often lumped in with other views like ethylism and promortalism, which are quite different from antinatalism. The people that want to preach violence are a threat to themselves, a threat to others, and a threat to antinatalism. They will hurt themselves, hurt others, and hurt antinatalism as well. They will just play into the demonization of antinatalism, make it more misunderstood, and they wrongly weaponize antinatalism and allow it to then become further weaponized by its opponents. If you're struggling mentally or emotionally, then seek help. Don't turn pain into violence. Violence is not the path towards a better future.